My name is Claire. I am 35 years old, and I work as a structural engineer in Seattle, Washington. My profession is pretty straightforward. I save buildings with failing foundations or those carrying a load far beyond their capacity. I read the stress fractures in the walls, calculate the lifespan of the concrete, and figure out which pillar is actually holding up the roof and which one is purely decorative. In any structure, there are two types of elements: those that just look good, and those that actually keep the building from collapsing. The irony is, while I can easily read the cracks in concrete and steel, I completely missed the cracks in the foundation of my own family for years. I couldn't see who the decorative pillar was, and who was carrying the real load. Tonight is a cold, rainy November evening. I'm sitting in my car, watching the raindrops race down the windshield. In my hands is a beautifully embossed invitation, printed in gold lettering. It's on that heavy, expensive cardstock people usually reserve for weddings. It reads, "Welcome to Olivia and Mark's new home, housewarming party." Olivia is my younger sister. And this new home is none other than the house on Oak Street where we both grew up. It's the house whose blue siding I paid to have painted, and whose roof I saved from caving in when my parents didn't have a single dollar to their name. Through the car window, I stare at the house. I look at the new white front door, the new windows spilling warm, golden light out into the dark. Inside, it's packed with people. Music is playing, a celebration is in full swing, and yet, my chest is completely empty of sorrow. I'm not even angry. All I feel is that familiar, icy calm, the exact same coldness I feel when I catch a crooked contractor in a lie and quietly hold up a mirror to his fraud. Let me take you back to where this all started, because you need to understand exactly why I did what I did tonight. Making it as a successful engineer in an expensive city like Seattle isn't easy. I took out student loans to put myself through school. I pulled all-nighters studying, worked day shifts at restaurants, and scraped together every penny to pay off my debt. I built my career from the ground up. By contrast, my parents always lived a very modest hand-to-mouth existence. My dad was an ordinary clerk at a small logistics firm, and my mom worked part-time at an elementary school. They never managed to save enough to build a safety net. During my senior year of college, our family's financial situation took a nosedive. The house was aging rapidly, and the maintenance costs had ballooned way past what my parents could afford. I still vividly remember that December. A massive storm hit Seattle, and water started pouring through our old roof. We had buckets and pots scattered across the dining table, the couch, and the floor just to catch the leaks. My dad sat with his head in his hands, and my mom was crying because they had absolutely no idea how they were going to pay for a new roof. Right around then, I received the check from my first major internship. Without a second thought, I dumped my entire earnings into fixing that roof. $14,000. That was my first investment in that house and in this family. After that, consciously or not, it became the unspoken rule. Whenever a major house expense popped up, all eyes would turn to me. Every year before winter, the property tax bill would arrive, and I would quietly pay it online. When the homeowner's insurance needed renewing, it was automatically drafted from my bank account. One time, dead in the middle of winter, the furnace died. The house turned into an icebox. The HVAC contractor quoted $8,000. My parents didn't even have enough credit limit left on their cards to cover it. I paid for it out of my savings. I never asked them to pay me back. I didn't even keep a running tally. I thought I was saving my family's home. I figured that since my parents raised me, securing their old age was my responsibility. I also assumed that one day, this house would be a shared inheritance between my sister and me, or at the very least, a safe haven for my parents in their final years. And then there's Olivia, my younger sister. She has always been the golden child of the family. She's gorgeous, a smooth talker, and knows exactly how to make herself the center of attention. The rules have always been different for her. When it was time for her to go to college, my parents drained whatever meager savings they had left for her expensive liberal arts tuition. When she wanted to go backpacking across Europe with her friends, my dad took out a personal loan in his name. When Olivia needed a designer dress, my mom would hand over her overtime pay. I never once objected. I had accepted a long time ago that Olivia was the decorative pillar, the one everyone admired, the one my parents loved to polish and show off. And I was the structural concrete pillar whose sole purpose was to bear the dead weight of the house. I accepted that catering to Olivia was their job, and keeping the foundation from cracking was mine. I worked night shifts, skipped vacations, and bought off-brand clothes just so my parents could sleep easy. But, as I always say in my line of work, a foundation doesn't fail overnight. It takes years to buckle. And when it finally gives way, it doesn't make a sound. It just collapses. It was the second Tuesday of last month. I was sitting in my office cubicle reviewing the design for an old suspension bridge. It was drizzling outside. Suddenly, an email popped up on my phone from the home insurance company. It stated that the auto pay for the Oak Street house's insurance had failed. The reason? The legal owner of the property had changed, and the policy needed to be rewritten under the new owner's name. I read the email and assumed it was a glitch, or maybe a clerical error in the county records. I immediately dialed my dad's number. He picked up after 2 rings. His voice had that strange, hesitant flutter, the one he always gets when he's hiding something from me. I asked him plainly, in my normal voice, "Dad, I just got an email from the insurance company. They're saying the owner of the Oak Street house has changed. What's going on? Did you switch something up at the bank?" A heavy silence fell over the line. I could only hear his breathing. Then, clearing his throat and stumbling over his words, he said, "Claire, well, we were actually going to tell you. We were just waiting for the right time. Look, honey, Olivia just got married. You know Mark's job isn't super stable right now, and Olivia is only working part-time. They need a big, safe house to start their family. So, we transferred the deed to Olivia and Mark." Another agonizing silence stretched across the call. Outside my office, the city hummed along, but inside me, everything went completely numb. It felt like the concrete floor had just dropped out from under my feet, and I was free-falling into an abyss. I took a deep breath. Keeping my voice totally flat, I asked, "Dad, does that mean this house is now entirely Olivia's? Legally?" He quickly jumped into defense mode. "Yes, sweetie, but don't worry. Your mother and I will still live right here in the upstairs bedroom, for as long as we're around. You're so capable, Claire. You make such good money. You've built this amazing career in Seattle. You could go out and buy a brand new house tomorrow if you wanted to. But poor Olivia. She's vulnerable. She needs this house more. That's how families help each other out, right?" I just said, "I understand, Dad." And I hung up. No screaming, no arguing, no hysterics. In my line of work, when you see a massive structure about to pancake, you don't stand there crying. You immediately assess the damage and pull yourself out of the rubble. That night, I went back to my apartment. I brewed a pot of coffee and booted up my laptop. I logged onto the county's public property records website. My dad was telling the truth. Exactly 2 months ago, they had signed a quitclaim deed, transferring full ownership of the house to Olivia and Mark. 2 months ago. And they had intentionally kept it a secret from me. Why? Because the annual property taxes were due next week, and they wanted me to blindly pay it like I always did. They hadn't lied to my face. They had just weaponized their silence to use me. Next, I pulled up all my old bank statements. I'm an engineer. I love numbers because numbers never lie. Numbers are the clearest mirror of a person's true intentions. I opened an Excel spreadsheet and started itemizing every single dime I had poured into that house over the last 5 years. Roof repairs, $14,000. Property taxes for the last 5 years, at $4,500 a pop, $22,500. The new furnace and emergency winter plumbing, $8,000. 5 years of homeowners insurance premiums, $7,000. Total, $51,500. $51,500. That was the staggering amount of my blood, sweat, and tears I had handed over to keep those walls standing and keep my parents from going homeless. I canceled vacations for that money. I spent countless nights at the office for that money. I sacrificed my weekends and my hobbies. And my parents, without asking me, without even giving me a heads up, had signed a piece of paper and gifted all of it to Olivia. Over the next few days, I intentionally looked at Olivia's social media accounts. She was posting pictures of the house every single day. One day she's drinking wine with Mark on the porch. The next she's posing in front of the remodeled kitchen. The captions read, "Finally, after years of hard work, we bought our first home. Our beautiful new beginning. Dreams really do come true when you hustle." Her friends and our relatives were eating it up in the comments. "You guys worked so hard for this, you deserve it." Olivia was parading around, letting everyone believe she bought this house on her own dime, like she had scraped together a down payment herself. I didn't feel angry looking at those fake posts. I was just astounded at the sheer audacity of people who can stamp their name on someone else's labor and proudly call it their own. And then, exactly 2 weeks later, the invitation showed up in my mailbox. An invitation to Olivia's housewarming party. I was being invited as a standard guest to the very house I had financially kept afloat. The day after the invite arrived, my mom called me. Her voice was dripping with so much sweetness you'd think nothing had happened. "Claire, you absolutely have to come to the party on Saturday. Olivia would be thrilled to have her big sister there. Oh, and Claire, if you could, bring a nice expensive wine set to serve the guests. You know you have such great taste in wine." I replied in a calm, flat tone. "Sure, Mom. I'll be there." How could I miss such a huge day in Olivia's life? I spent a whole week preparing for that party. I didn't buy any wine. Instead, I bought a beautiful, deep red leather portfolio. Inside that folder, I placed some very important documents. First document, the homeowner's insurance cancellation notice I had received. Second document, the actual property tax bill due next week, for a cool $5,000, which remained unpaid. Third document, the confirmation receipts proving my name and my autopay details had been removed from the water, electricity, gas, and garbage collection accounts. Fourth document, my Excel spreadsheet, detailing every single penny of that $51,500 I had spent over the last 5 years. It was a chilly Seattle evening the night of the party. I parked my car and stood in front of the house. It was bathed in light. The lawn was packed with shiny new cars, and the sounds of laughter and chatter drifted out into the crisp air. I took a deep breath, adjusted my coat, gripped the red leather folder tightly, and rang the doorbell. Olivia opened the door, wearing a stunning designer dress. She feigned excitement, hugging me and squealing, "Oh, Claire, you made it. I thought you'd be too busy with work. Come in, everyone wants to see you." I stepped inside. The house was full of relatives, Olivia's friends, and Mark's coworkers. Mark was standing in the middle of the living room, pointing out the vaulted ceilings and hardwood floors to his buddies like he had framed them himself. My parents sat in the corner on the sofa, beaming with pride as they watched their youngest daughter mingle. I walked through the house quietly. I didn't engage in small talk. Aunt Martha cornered me and asked, "Well, Claire, Olivia's all settled down now. When are you getting married?" I just smiled and brushed it off. I stood there staring at the walls I had picked the paint for, the roof I had shielded from storms. Everything was exactly the same, but there was no room for me here anymore. To them, I was just an ATM, and clearly, they felt they didn't need me anymore. About an hour later, after everyone had eaten and the drinks were flowing, Olivia clinked her spoon against her wineglass. The room slowly quieted down. All eyes turned to her. She stood by the staircase and launched into an incredibly emotional speech. "I am just so happy today. I want to thank my wonderful parents for trusting Mark and me, and for giving us this beautiful home. This isn't just bricks and mortar. This is our dream home. We are going to raise our children here and make so many new memories. Thank you all so much for coming." The room erupted into applause. My parents had tears of joy in their eyes. Mark leaned over and kissed Olivia. It was like a perfect scene out of a Hollywood movie. As the applause died down and people were about to resume their conversations, I stepped forward. The red folder was in my hand. The click of my heels echoed on the hardwood floors supported by damaged beams that I had paid to replace. Olivia saw me walking toward her and plastered that fake smile back on her face. "Claire, did you want to say something too?" I stopped right in front of her. We were barely 2 feet apart. I kept my voice entirely normal, professional, and composed. There was no tremor, no anger, just the cool detachment of an engineer delivering a final report. "I couldn't possibly show up to your housewarming party without a gift, Olivia," I said. "This is your new home, your fresh start. And as you know, with a big new house comes big new responsibilities." I gracefully handed her the red leather folder. Olivia looked at me, slightly confused, and opened it. Right on top was the insurance cancellation notice, stamped "Cancelled" in bright red ink. The color instantly drained from her face. Her smile vanished. Her voice hitched as she asked, "Claire, what is this? Why is there an insurance cancellation letter?" I leisurely swept my gaze across the room at the guests, then to my parents who had stood up from the sofa, and finally locked eyes with Olivia again. The room had gone so dead silent you could hear a pin drop. "This is the real and necessary housewarming gift, Olivia," I said. "You're the homeowner now, which means you need to know everything about the property. That first page is the canceled homeowner's insurance. Since you own the deed, you'll need to buy a new policy in your name first thing tomorrow morning." I paused for a second before continuing. "The second page is the property tax bill that's due next week. It's exactly $5,000. Up until today, this was set to autodraft from my bank account, but since the property is yours, the taxes are yours too. Make sure you pay it by next Friday, or the county will slap you with penalties." Mark had hurried over to Olivia's side and was peering into the folder. He looked like he'd just been slapped in the face. I kept going. "The third page has the account numbers for the water, electric, gas, and trash collection. If you don't transfer those accounts into your name and put your credit card on file by 8 a.m. tomorrow, the utilities will be shut off. I've canceled all my automatic payments for good." And on the very last page, I added with a faint smile, is a little Excel spreadsheet. It's an itemized receipt for the $51,500 I've spent on this house's roof, furnace, and taxes over the last 5 years. You don't have to pay me back. Consider it a parting gift from me. But as of today, not a single cent of my money will ever go toward this house's maintenance or bills again. The atmosphere in the room was so heavy people were struggling to breathe. Aunt Martha stood frozen like a statue. My parents were pale as ghosts. My mom rushed forward and tried to grab my arm. "Claire, what on earth are you doing?" she hissed furiously, keeping her voice low. "This isn't the time to make a scene. We have a house full of guests. How could you humiliate your sister like this?" I looked at my mother. Not a single tear in my eye. In a tone as cold as ice, I replied, "This isn't a scene, Mom, and it's not a humiliation. It's simply a handover. I poured my life savings into this house, from the foundation to the roof, for 5 years. I did it because I thought this was my family, my home. But you and Dad signed this house over to Olivia without saying a word to me, and you stayed quiet, hoping I'd just blindly pay the property taxes again this year." Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes. They were those specific tears she summons whenever she needs to play the victim. "Claire, you're so heartless," she cried. "How could you do this? You know Mark and I can't afford these massive bills right now. We're newly married. You make so much money. $5,000 is nothing to you. You're just jealous of me, and you're trying to ruin my party." I didn't budge. I leaned in slightly and said, "No, Olivia, I'm not jealous of you in the slightest, and I'm not ruining your party. I am just introducing you to reality. Owning a home isn't just about posting pictures on Instagram and fishing for compliments. It means paying the hidden costs that nobody sees. Up until today, I was paying that price. I was carrying the weight of this house. From now on, it's your house, which means they are your bills. Welcome to the real world." I turned to look at my dad, who was standing with his head bowed, unable to meet my eyes. "Dad," I said, "you guys chose your responsibilities, and you chose your favorite daughter. Today, I'm choosing mine. Starting now, none of my money and none of my time will ever go toward this house or your expenses again." I turned around and walked toward the door with steady, deliberate steps. Behind me, a strange chaos erupted in the room. Mark was yelling at Olivia, demanding to know why he hadn't been told about these bills. My mom was calling my name from behind, but I didn't stop once. I opened the front door and stepped out into the cold air. I started my car and drove off Oak Street for good. I thought I might cry once I got in the car. I thought I'd feel the crushing grief of losing my family. But as I drove, the tears never came. Instead, I felt a bizarre, incredibly beautiful sense of freedom. It was the kind of freedom you only feel when you finally drop a heavy, agonizing burden you've been carrying on your shoulders for years. I had carried the financial and emotional weight of my family for so long. I used to believe that if I stopped paying, the house would collapse, and my parents would be out on the street. But the truth was, I was killing myself to save a house that never had any room for me in the first place. I was a utility to them, not a daughter. It's been 6 months since that night. A lot has happened. In the first few weeks, my phone blew up with calls from my family and relatives. At first, they trashed me in the group chats, calling me selfish and greedy. But once the reality of the situation set in, their tune changed drastically. Olivia and Mark didn't have the money for the property taxes. They started getting notices from the county. Mark had to sell his shiny new car just to pay the tax bill. In the dead of winter, the furnace broke down again. This time, I wasn't there to write a check. They had to beg friends and relatives for loans to fix it. Ironically, the same relatives who had badmouthed me at the party suddenly started distancing themselves from Olivia, realizing they were the ones who were going to be hit up for cash. My parents called me constantly, begging me to help Olivia. My mom would sob on the phone, saying Olivia was incredibly stressed and her marriage was on the rocks. But every single time I told them in clear, icy terms that the Bank of Clare was closed forever. I reminded them, it's Olivia's house, so they are Olivia's problems. I chalked up that $51,500 as the cost of a life lesson. A ridiculously expensive lesson, sure, but one that bought my freedom for the rest of my life. I now live in a beautiful, quiet neighborhood in Seattle. I bought myself a small, incredibly charming house. The legal paperwork is solely in my name. The morning sun shines right through the windows onto my bed. I planted the garden in the backyard with my own 2 hands. And best of all, the only people allowed inside this house are the people I love and who respect me. We often love our families so blindly that we let them use our lives, our hard work, and our emotions for free. We give them everything, hoping that one day they'll realize our worth. But the bitter truth is, people who only love you for your utility and your wallet will never respect you. To them, you aren't a person. You're just a resource. I didn't destroy my family. I just freed myself from their dead weight. And I don't regret my decision for a single second. That's my story. A blue house, a red folder, and a quiet decision that gave me back my life and my self-respect. If you've ever felt like an ATM or a tool to be used by your own family or relationships, stand up for yourself today. Draw your boundaries. Save your money and your dignity, because no one else is going to do it for you. If you liked this story and agree that a calm, quiet response is sometimes way more powerful than screaming and shouting, drop a comment below. Have you ever had